our next panel discussion on creating a digital IoT future.
There. Well, please, whatever you want, have a seat. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure. As Jan said, the future is starting now, and you show certain example already on the digital transformation. And IoT, as you said, is just one of the enabler. I'd like to invite the panelist, Ed, from Samsung Enterprise. Please give him a hand as well. And Greg, VP Manufacturing Operation, HEB. So, building up on what Jan presented this morning, I'd like to start with the first question to him, actually. When will you expect Pepper to replace you in one of these events?
Well, probably it is not so. It is not so in a not so distant future that will be possible, because the artificial intelligence, the machine learning capabilities, if you put them into Pepper, will enable Pepper to give a speech like this. If you would have been at Enterprise Connect, you could have seen my presentation given by Pepper already at Enterprise Connect. So I guess that maybe some of the guys in the room want to talk to me personally still, so I would stick around anyway. But maybe I sit down there and listen to Pepper as well.
Just a recommendation for the organizer, for whom I thank very much for this event. As Pepper may come soon and support you or replace you, I think some French politicians are already giving real-time speeches with holograms. So they do an event in Lyon, for instance, and in Paris they have a room, plenty of dozens of thousands of people, but the person talking to them is a hologram, which is live broadcasted from another city. So in your YouTube activities right now, think of the hologram and eventually projecting in 3D Jan's next speech through that model. I'd like to give a word to the two panelists. So I think we have HEB from a manufacturing perspective. So why are you here today? What are you expecting from an IoT event like that?
The thing I'm expecting and the thing that I've seen throughout my career is how mainly CPG companies continue to evolve. Some have moved forward very quickly, others have lagged behind. And really, when you think about information technology, today it may be giving companies a competitive advantage, but 5, 6, 7 years from now, it's not going to be a competitive advantage. It's going to be a necessity to be in business. And particularly when you think about food safety, and we think about genealogy and supply chain and how we track everything from micro to areas of origin, it's going to become more and more important. So when you think about the world that I'm in today, it's not just inside the plant any longer. There's still plenty of opportunity there, but it's really enterprise-wide all the way back to the fields. And we have food from all over the world coming in, and we have to be able to manage and track that.
So along the discussion, we'll try to understand better the thinking of the ecosystem. What would you expect from a manufacturer and from a telco? Let's move on to Ed from Samsung. So you've been very much active in developing devices in all kind of areas, and now more and more enabling the enterprise area to be more effective, obviously all connected to the internet. So what would be your future role or the current role in enabling the digital transformation of enterprises?
So that's a great question. And from Samsung's perspective, we see our role exactly as Jan talked about it in his opening remarks. Inside that ecosystem, providing the devices that enable connectivity, not only device to device, but device to human, because at the end of an IoT network, at the end of an IoT experience, there is still a human interaction. So that is a critical component of what we do. But it's not simply devices, it's device management that allows for cleaning of data that will come off of those devices, that allows for big data and analytics engines to work effectively. And of course, it is security and enabling our devices and other devices to securely exchange data in an IoT environment such that it protects the end user and enables effective business results.
Thank you. We heard about the 5 cents from Maza-san, right? So you mentioned that this took millions of years, and now we're accelerating in the last 25 years and 5 years. Do you think that IoT would become our 6th sense, in a way?
Well, probably it will enable us to use our senses in a better way, in a more intelligent way, and combine our senses more intelligently as we do it today. So through IoT, again, if you follow Massa, he's thinking that IoT will make machines and the interaction with machines much smarter. And he talks about a factor of 1,000. And he said in a speech at the Mobile World Congress, just think about it. If you put a chip in your shoe, your shoe will be 1,000 times more intelligent than you. So I mean, that's the vision. I mean, the vision is how to utilize.
So the combination of the five senses eventually with an augmented technology will create this sixth sense, because it's a network effect at the end of the day. You get smarter and you get better in eventually taking decisions, and this moves on to the enterprise environment. So Greg, in terms of your expectation for the future, in terms of partnership, what is the problem you try to solve, and what are your expectations in that area?
I would say one of the biggest problems when you think about manufacturing in general is companies have, and depending on the type of products, it can be very manual to semi-manual. And as we progress, we want to become at least control assisted and hopefully fully automated. But then beyond that, the opportunity really is to become self-correcting. And so that's when the partnerships come into play and make our machines that are manufacturing in the field smart enough that they can begin to self-correct. And as a result, we have better reliability. We maintain our center lines, and of course, then we maintain the product quality, and then ultimately food safety as well. So it's about getting machines that are smart, and to the point to where it's not just automation, it's self-correcting.
But for that, you need also companies to get into your value chain, understand what you do in order to better support you.
Exactly.
So how are you, let's say, opening up in letting them in, understanding what you do in details, and where do you start from?
Sure. So that's an opportunity. So consumer products, goods companies are always competing against one another, and as a result, there's always this effort to try to maintain what people believe are proprietary or not. But as the competition increases and the need to perform increases, then you're going to see more up and down the supply chain interconnectivity. So all the way upstream with material suppliers, packaging, raw ingredients, and of course downstream all the way to the store shelf. So those that begin to create those partnerships end to end are going to be the ones that ultimately have the most success. So the first one to break through there and say, oh, we need this to have a competitive advantage and really build those partnerships, that's where the opportunity will lie.
From the discussion we had yesterday, we understand that there are kind of two areas of decision making. One is about the platform, the technology, and one is more about the business model, etc. So how do you go about this decision making process in your company?
From the platform point of view, the hard part is as you begin to spend money on infrastructure, technology is evolving very quickly. So the opportunity is to have enough foresight to take a little risk, perhaps, to get into some evolving areas, because by the time you actually have it implemented, it's probably already maybe going obsolete. So the speed of technology movement has been a difficulty. And the other part of your question was? Is
about the business model, but let's stay with this example. I think, is that the reason why the platform as a service is becoming more popular, because of these technology cycle changes? So
Absolutely.
You're moving rather from a CapEx investment to as a service?
Absolutely.
Is that the model you're considering?
Yes, myself, and if you go around many other manufacturers in CPG, it's the same thing. When you have assets on site, then you have to maintain those assets, and then obviously the upgrades that come with that, you tend to fall behind because of resourcing. So everybody, even those that had resisted it maybe a year ago, are becoming aware that the opportunity is to use services. That way you know that you're continually updated, just like the apps on your iPhone. It updates all the time, so it's always current. And manufacturers, consumer products, goods are realizing that they can't afford to maintain their infrastructure internally. Now, there's a point that you have to have some because of time, the speed that things happen, but then there's a subset of information, of course, the operating systems that you want to house somewhere else, so they're always updated.
That was around the technology choices and decisions. What about the business, so to say, model? As we said in the digital transformation, using technologies like IoT to enable your business, there is an opportunity always to change your business model, become more disruptive, etc. So that decision-making process is disconnected typically to the technology and the partner you select. So how you go about that model?
Yeah, so when we think about the model, probably the biggest stumbling block at this point is security, cybersecurity, and then the risks that are faced. So companies are becoming more and more aware of, we've seen companies compromised and credit cards compromised and all of that personal information, and I would tell you that that is probably the biggest stumbling block, is fear of what if someone gets into our system, then what happens? So I would tell you the partnership side, it's not so much an unwillingness to partner, it's the fear of what happens if we begin to put everything out on the IoT. Who has access? How do we maintain control of our proprietary information? And I would tell you, if you're sitting in the CIO chair, that is the biggest risk that they face. And that's the stumbling block to really move forward quickly.
Coming back to Jan, you said that there are basically, we heard that many times yesterday as well, and it was well illustrated in your videos, that you have basically two sides of the same coin. One is about efficiency, cost, and the other one is about business, upside, new revenues, etc., transformation, disruption, etc. So telcos are getting to this business, and they need, first of all, to get the legitimacy and the basically awareness by larger enterprises that you're the right partner. So how do you go about addressing, and assuming that the IoT is one of the most difficult solution you sell to enterprises. So how do you split, so to say, you go away from your classical connectivity business to, let's say, explaining to a company that eventually you can participate in the cost-saving transformation, or helping them to sell new services in the context of a utility company, for instance, as you illustrated? Who do you talk to?
That's a very good question. I mean, telcos are traditionally transactional companies that sell commodities. And you sell commodities on features and functions and price. And in order to compete, you need to deliver a high quality, and high quality makes you compete on price because you get more, and because you get more, you can lower the cost per unit. That's the traditional scaling way of telecoms selling. And going into the IoT space means you need to become a trusted advisor of your customer. And you become a trusted advisor by delivering what you promise. And if you, for example, we are aware that a wireline network, an IP MPLS network that connects, like say 1,500 branch offices of a big customer needs to be up and running, and the SLA must be fulfilled. And if you do that, then you create trust with your partner that you can deliver what you promise. And that's the way we do it. We go step by step and transform our organization from being a transactional organization into a consultative selling organization. We have to go beyond the purchasing area within our customers. We need to talk to the innovation drivers within our customers. That's very often the CIOs, but very often it's also not the CIO.
CIO, the Chief Innovation or Chief Information Officer?
Chief Information Officer is very often in the driver's seat, but very often it's also not in the driver's seat. And then you have to go to the business, and you have to interact with the business. And I tell you, when you sell a connected vehicle proposition to Fiat Chrysler or Mercedes-Benz or Volkswagen, or that's not a popular name today in the US, I guess, but anyway, so you sell to this chief strategist, you sell to the chief digital officer, you sell to the product manager.
But you need a totally new profile of people in your organization to do that.
Yes, you need both, right? Because IoT is of course, it's a very consultative sales approach, but then it's a very transactional execution. Still, you need to deliver the telco skills. You need to be scalable, you need to be reliable, you need to be resilient, you need to be secure, you have to have security embedded. All the stuff we do today in an IP MPLS network where we connect sites, or in a wireless network where we connect the people of our customers, talk about a bank, that deals with proprietary, information every day. So that's our day-to-day business, to understand what security means for customers, to understand what business criticality means. Now we have to augment it with the consultative skills. And of course, we are hiring different skill sets into telcos today compared to the past.
And the complexity we experience as well as a consultant is that every organization is different when it comes to taking decision on IoT. Sometimes, as you say, it's driven by the CIO, but very often the CIO have a very limited role because all the business decisions are taken by the business unit heads, and sometimes you have a CEO who creates a new digital division that should actually, as a role, have to drive the whole digital transformation. So it's very complex to understand who pretend to be the economical buyer and who actually is at the end of the decision maker. So I assume that these challenges now.
It's always a multi-dimensional animal that you have to deal with.
But
always.
if you win, so to say, we're talking about contracts not about 1 or 2 years that are every year or the second year renegotiated. We're talking about a business model that supported transformation 5 or 10 years.
We are talking about strategic partnerships.
Smart city.
It's not necessarily bound to a contract period. It's bound to a trusted relationship that you create with your partner, with your customer. That's what we aim for.
We heard yesterday from Telit and many other suppliers in the room yesterday and their presentations that today you have already ready-made toolboxes. You can take an IoT service that is already coming with a set of bundled minutes and data, and with all the sensor you require. So it's a plug and play model. You can put it on a dog or in a car or whatever, and it works, and you can do all your proof of concepts already. So what does that mean for Samsung, and how are you going to transform your own business model from just providing superior devices to actually apply the IoT business model to yourself, going from a hardware to actually a software business?
Right, so that's another very good question, and quite honestly, it's been a lot of what our journey over the last 2 years has been. We have spent significant time, significant investment moving from simply a device provider to an enterprise solution-oriented company. So yes, there are IoT starter kits. Yes, there are devices. Yes, there are platforms that we can bring to the table. But the strategic approach we're taking is that kit that we have in the back there is only as useful as the specific problem a customer will have. So the fact that we've got technologies, we know how to make those technologies talk to one another, we know how to secure those technologies, we know how to have those technologies interact over networks, we know how to have those technologies interact with things that we don't produce, will all accelerate time to market for a customer, but it starts with a solutions-based selling approach. It starts with design thinking together with the customer around what problem they're trying to solve. And it starts with co-creation that's accelerated through devices and capabilities that we have in play. We're doing this with third-party customers today. We're doing this inside of our own organization, where inside of Korea, as an example, we have changed the manufacturing process. We have changed the way you interact and the way you move from building to building on our campus in Suwon, right? All IoT enabled so that we can learn at the same time that we're selling and bring those expertise to customers and to other partners in the ecosystem.
Are there a lot of partnership between OEMs and telcos to just buy packages, I would say, that can be used in a wholesale, all kind of model? Were you expecting, so to say, to challenge the telcos and build your own capability with system integration, buying the toolkits and also buying the connectivity and provide solution as a service? Is that, so to say, a role we can expect companies like yours to get in the future?
So I think we will look to deliver solution as a service, absolutely, but not as a challenge to the telcos, in partnership with the telcos. Because again, as Jan pointed out in his opening remarks, each of us have skill, each of us have expertise, each of us have knowledge that's critical to share in order to solve a customer's problem. I'd be foolhardy to say I could do it all as Samsung. That will never be the case. I need the networks, I need their capability, I need the capabilities of some of the ISVs, some of the systems integrators. But yes, we do want to get to the point where we can bring quickly an enabled set of technologies that can plug into those solutions and that we understand the solution orientation of the business.
Before giving the floor to the audience for questions, please prepare yourself if you have some. There is a microphone in the middle of the room. As we are filmed right now, I think it's important that you stand next to the microphone when you ask your question. But a concluding question I have for you is that you all have limited resources at some point, and you need to make some bets. So which are the industries you believe they are most mature to start, let's say, considering the digital transformation, leveraging on IoT, I saw the list before. You started with, because of regulation, with smart grid. I can challenge that and say eventually retail, it's much more advanced, or I can go to other industry, healthcare, et cetera, smart cities. So how did you sort of say organize yourself internally now, and which bets are you making in terms of priorities of most mature verticals? Who would like to start?
Look, I think regulation is always an easy driver, right? Because if the states issue a law and everybody has to comply, then that's the driver number one. And that happened in the automotive industry in Europe when the e-call was introduced.
Exactly. Absolutely.
And that forced every car manufacturer to come up with a device in the car that connects the car. So obviously the OEMs in the car manufacturing environment were the fastest drivers of IoT. Utility, as said, of course, also driven by regulation, but also by necessity. I think probably one of the biggest areas where we can solve issues of customers would be the healthcare sector, because there's so much cost in that healthcare sector that is wasted money. But again, here the regulation very often is counterproductive, because if you put a device in the healthcare industry,
consumer
you must
protection
go through a certification process that is much more complicated than everywhere else. So
yesterday we discussed the liability. So who wants to have the data? If you're a doctor, you're adding the liability to the doctor. Very interesting discussion, by the way. Okay, so basically you're driven by regulation, but you also mentioned before that the result of disruption coming. So eventually you want to also to make bets on the one who will disrupt the industry, because if you become the partner, eventually you become a champion.
I guess that my key account managers know their customers pretty well. And my key account managers will set the pace, so to say, for us. So we want to work very much demand-driven by our customers. So what sense does it make to spend your time with a customer that is not ready to innovate? We can explain to them what we could do, but if they're not willing, and I think that's independent of industry. So if a logistics company wants to drive it, we go after it, right? If a healthcare company wants to drive it, we go after it, and we try to come up with a joint business case that delivers a win-win situation. That's how we deal.
I see you sense your pragmatism here as a businessman. Concluding remark, please. Go ahead.
So maybe a point there is what you described is you have to create the burning platform. And so what does regulation do? In general, people resist change. We see it everywhere. We like our comfort zones. We like what we know. And innovation for many can be scary, and then there's some of us, probably the people in this room, that thrive on innovation and change and disrupting. But then there's the other 90% of the population that really wants to keep things the way they are because it's comfortable. So yes, regulation will drive change because you have to. And then maybe in a company, you have a passionate leader who is a change agent and says, you know what, we have to change. And you think about GE and Jeff Immelt, he made a radical change in that company, going from an industrial production manufacturing company to moving to the digital internet and bringing all that value. So in a company, you need that passionate leader to drive it, or you need some other burning platform.
And from a Samsung perspective, we were very pragmatic, to be very honest. We looked at where we had capability, where we had partnerships, where we had the ability to help customers solve business problems, and it led us to 4 industries that we're really focused on. Smart cities, and within that, really the smart building subset, healthcare, retail, and the travel and transportation spaces, which also includes hospitality. And again, why did we do that? Because we can go and we can start to disrupt those markets today.
Thank you for that. I think we have a first question lined up. Please mention your name, the company you're working for.
Hi, my name is David Madden. I'm with Gemalto. And I've got a question. If you guys were to look out 10 years from now and look back at where you are today, what advice would you give to all of us 10 years in the future? And the reason I ask that question is, you know that in 10 years, things can be dramatically different than they are today. And if you were to, I know we were talking tactics for most of the session, but I'd love to get your sense of where you see things 10 years from now for IoT.
Crystal ball. Okay, so I think first of all, we should test it out, right? To do whatever is needed to utilize technology. So I think nobody, I guess I can speak for everybody here, will know what's happening in 10 years from now. We can't even do a 3-year plan in this world of acceleration of innovation. But I think the secret source is at the end of the day that we test technology out when it comes to the game. I mean, we very often wait too long until we catch up the newest thing. As I said earlier, it's not a fast follower world anymore. It's a world where we need to drive things. And if you really want to nail me down on what the world will look in 10 years from now, I think we will be at the 20 billion connected machines that we have prognosed for 20 years away from today. So I think it will go much faster. If you look into the acceleration curve of what's happening, Moore's law is not stopping. I mean, it's happening as we speak, so everything will be connected that can be connected.
But again, just to add a point there, even if you don't know the future, we cannot predict it, in which scenario, because we think in scenario all the time, you believe more in a world with fewer players or very fragmented environment when it comes to the IoT ecosystem?
I think it will continue to be a variety of partners that will work together in an ecosystem. And I think we will see
few or very fragmented?
Many more.
Many more.
So we
okay.
will see a consolidation in infrastructure play, obviously, because it's very expensive to run an infrastructure across a country like the US. So consolidation is obviously necessary here. But then there's always new stuff coming up, new ideas and creativity. Look at what's happening in Silicon Valley. That's thousands of startups, right? Why would that go slower?
Well, if you look at the marketplaces, whether it's Alibaba or Amazon, we're going to very few. If you look at the devices as well, smartphone, we're going to very few. So the question in the IoT, will that be different? And eventually...
Yeah, as I said, disruptors are getting disruption, seeing disruption already today, so it's happening.
So what you're saying is the disruption forces are much stronger, and you will eventually see a much bigger, eventually transformation and fragmentation.
Yeah, I think that's true at certain levels of the IoT environment. Absolutely, there will be disruptors who bring new technologies, new innovations, new ideas. But when you think about it at the platform layer, when you think about it at the big data and analytics layer, when you think about it at the infrastructure layer, if you've looked at technology over the last 35 years, whether it be cloud 10 years ago or even client server-based computing, to show my own age, right? There has been a consolidation at the systems level. There has to be, right? Because otherwise, nothing talks to one another.
Because of the interoperability challenges we have.
Exactly.
Well, yesterday it was a very strong message as well that any new IoT player has to come up with a stack that is already interoperable, interfacing SAP, all the basic infrastructure, Microsoft, etc. So for me, the entry barriers are getting higher than lower.
Yes.
So we'll see in 10 years what will happen, Jan. But,
Maybe we meet again here.
Now the one thing I will disagree with Jan on is I know one thing for certain. In 10 years, the IoT strategy and problem will be somebody else's problem other than my own.
Thanks. Umair, you have a question, please.
So, in my view, one of the impediments to adoption of IoT has been still devices and the network. And lastly, the platform interoperability that you mentioned. But focusing on devices and network, the issue is twofold. One is the cost of ownership or the cost of actually deploying and maintaining an IoT system remains to be extremely high, again, regarding devices and infrastructure or network. How do you see, coming from Sprint and coming from Samsung, how do you see we can attack this problem and get really quickly to devices which are in dollars and to network, which is really the cost of ownership over 1 year is $1 or less?
Would like to pick up a question?
Well, I'll start from the device side, right? Device costs continue to drop and continue to drop dramatically. And if you look at the functionality that's going into those devices at those cost levels, you again see more functionality at a lower cost. I think it's not necessarily the right mindset to look at it from a device cost or a network cost perspective, but what is the time to value of the investments we're making? And that's why for us, many of the things that we're doing with customers today say think big, but start small. Look at pilots, look at capabilities that deliver quick return on investment, and then you can determine your growth. Because oftentimes, people look at the initial cost of technology, whether it be devices, whether it be the network cost, but don't think about the long tail impact on business returns. That's where we're trying to get customers to talk and to think, while they also understand that the device costs will continue to come down. It's simply Moore's law when you relate to technology that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I would confirm that. We are in a scalable business model here. The cost per device will go down with the number of devices that we will issue. Standardization helps very much on that. Like always, if you have a standard, it will scale much faster than if everybody invents their own thing. And that is what telecoms and manufacturers and supporters and suppliers know very well how to do. The management of devices will also come down. So if we talk today about 50 cents per device that we manage, it will go to 20 cents, it will go to 5 cents very soon. It's a question of scale. And again, my plea to the companies around here that are users of this technology, be brave enough to bet on that future. Because if we are right, that is, it will be billions of connected devices, and I guess we are right, then it will come down dramatically. And if you do your business case calculation, don't do it for the next 3 years. Do it for the next maybe 5 years or so, because that will allow you to scale very much in your own shops and get the costs where they probably will be in the very future.
Thank you, gentlemen. Just last question. We're already over time. Quick question, quick answer, please.
Okay. None of you mentioned education, and I asked an autism question yesterday, and I'll ask it again. Could we put Pepper into a school for kids with autism? Could Samsung help build the apps so the kids who cannot speak interact with Pepper? And would HEB sponsor the project?
I can answer the HEB part. HEB is working on building high schools that are focused on STEM and education, so HEB is heavily invested in the communities they serve, so HEB will always be there to help.
And I think IoT is definitely a technology that will enable and access democratically all kind of, let's say, minorities.
Exactly. We're heavily invested in the education space. We're heavily invested through our program Hope for Children and developing new capabilities and bringing technologies to those areas. So absolutely, we're engaged, and we will continue and engage heavily in that area.
We have launched a program just recently, and President Obama launched it together with Marcelo Claure, our CEO. It's the 1 million project, where we deploy 1 million connected devices to underprivileged children that cannot do their homework today because they're not connected to the internet. So we really try to solve problems in education using our technology. Samsung is supporting us here very much, and others. And I think Pepper is a great idea. Pepper is a device that can read emotions, that can interact emotionally. It has a digital signage on its chest, which is a tablet computer. You can interact with Pepper in various ways. And it's if you see in the videos that I suggest you download in YouTube or stream in YouTube, you see a very emotional interaction between children and robots, and it's working really fine. So it's a great suggestion, and I would love to follow up on that.
I'm very eager to meet Pepper, in particular because of the emotions. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, please give them a hand. I think it was a fantastic panel. And we move on to the next session.
Discussion, gentlemen, and now we're going to